Hi, welcome to the Leadership Doctor, where we talk about all things leadership. I'm Dr. Christine Fusilier. Today, we're going to start our masterclass series on John Maxwell's book, The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. I hope that you were able to get the book, and there's also a workbook that goes with it. And we're going to kind of just walk through the chapters and apply them to some of our real life situations. The first chapter, and he's talking about, is called The Law of Lead. I think this is a really phenomenal chapter because it sets the tone for all of the other laws. And the law of lead, and I'm going to read some pieces just so that I make sure I don't get anything wrong, and then we can really unpack them from there. So one of the things that it states is leadership ability is the lid that determines the potential of the leader's effectiveness. The lower a individual's ability to lead, the lower the lid of his or her potential. The higher the individual's ability to lead, the higher the lid of his potential. So it's not like a lid to cover it up, but it's a lid as to how high it goes. So if you go from the theory, as he explains in the book, of from a 1 to 10, if you rate your leadership level, if your leadership level is at an 8, that means you can't lead more than a 7. If your leadership level is a 4, that means you can't lead more than a 3. So the higher your level, the more influence you can have, equaling the more impact you will have. That's a very key element. As he goes through the chapter, he shares the story of Dick and Maurice McDonald's and talks about how they start their business. Initially, they started one business as in a movie theater, and it didn't work out so well because they weren't profitable. Then they started into the restaurant business, where at the time, back in the 1930s, I believe, they were doing the drive up restaurants where you would drive up and you're able to get your food and someone will bring it out to you. So he explains the process of how Dick and Maurice started the business, and then they were making quite a bit of money for that time, and they decided they were going to try to franchise it. But based on their limited leadership abilities, it limited their ability to be more influential and to grow their business. So they were failing miserably in that space, trying to sell the business, sell it in the sense of how to franchise it. Then one of their vendors, who was Ray Kroc, who was the supplier for their milkshake machines, he stepped in and he saw the potential a lot bigger. So some of the differentiators that were outlined in this chapter was the difference between a manager and a leader. So Dick and Maurice were great managers, but they didn't have the ability to lead, to take things to the next level. So they were kind of paralyzed. While they were financially okay, they did not know how to now grow this business. So again, Ray came in, he negotiated some deals to help further build the business. He was able to buy the brand and get all the rights to it. And then he was then able to then make this as to what we know today as a global organization. And it's all about his leadership style. He saw the ability and he was very influential in how he came in to make some of the changes in the organizations. And some of the things that I thought were extremely important that he came in and did that I definitely want to call out, because this makes, when you, as a leader, you're going into an organization and sometimes you may be taking it over, you may be new to the role, new to the industry, but there's key things that he did that I thought was extremely important. And one of them is that he sacrificed. He was able to run the business while he was pulling money out of his savings. He didn't take a salary for a while, and he understood that he was investing into the organization. He also assembled a team. Now, a good leader knows how to put a good team around them. And that team usually are people who can pick up where they're not, where the leader isn't strong, people who are experts in their field. A good leader is not afraid to surround themselves with other experts, especially if it's not something that they're an expert in themselves. So he assembled a team, and then he recruited and hired sharper people that he could find to help his team grow. So, and that's a telltale of a good leader. Understand the people that you have around you, and how do you bring in the best people. Those were some key things that Ray Kroc did that now put the level of McDonald's where it is today. And he also did another thing, which was partnership. Partnered with people and was able to get their buy-in into how great McDonald's was going to become. Now, mind you, this was back in 1957, and it was just in this, early stages. So he had to sell this to people, and he was able to do it in a way where they bought into it and they invested into it. So those were some really key points. Something else I want to call out in this chapter, it says the higher you want to climb, the more you need leadership. The greater the impact you want to make, the greater your influence needs to be. And that was demonstrated by Ray Kroc. So those were some great points, and that was a great way to explain what does it mean for the law of the lid. It basically, again, is saying the higher your leadership ability, the bigger influence you are. The bigger influence you are, the better leader you are. The lower it is, the lower your leadership lid is, the less influence and effective that you will be. And it also illustrates how to grow that. So he also tells a story in here about a consulting firm who would go into organizations that were failing and try to upright them. And one of the things that the man who was in charge of the organization said he would do, his name was Don Stephenson, and he was the chairman of Global Hospitality Resources. He would go in and they would train the people who were there to give better quality service, but then he would also fire the leader. Because, and I think I've said this before, in the movie The Bug's Life, they say something in a very subtle way about how everything is the leader's fault. So if the company is not profitable, if there's something wrong culturally with the organization, you look to the leadership. And Mr. Stephenson's answer was to fire leadership. But John Maxwell puts a different spin on it. He says, if you're willing to, number one, learn where you are for your lid, where your lid is, then you have the ability to improve it. And you do that by development and investing in your own leadership growth. And it is something that can grow and get better. Instead of firing someone, you may have an opportunity to help them improve so that they can become better. So that was a quick summary of what the chapter was about, and it also gives us different tips on how we as leaders can try to increase our leadership lid, if you will. And one of the ways he talks about is maybe for the people who are reporting into you, you ask them to rate you on a scale from 1 to 10 in these categories. One of them is people skills, planning and strategic thinking, vision and results. And you may also want to add, I always think it's important for them to add any commentary, because sometimes the feedback is so much richer when you give them a chance to explain how they see you or their interpretation of what that means. So those are some great tips. And also in the workbook, it has a lot of great questions, which I will pose that I think as a leader, you may want to ask yourself, and hopefully they will give you some time to reflect and see, maybe this is an opportunity for me to grow. So do you think that someone whose leadership lid seems unlimited, do you think that's a mindset of a growth mindset, or a growth mindset, or a fixed mindset? And what do I mean by that? And the growth mindset is someone who, regardless as to what's happening, they always think in the along the lines of, I can always improve, I can do better, I can do more, I can be greater, regardless as to what the situation was. A fixed mindset is someone who is very much going to be set on, well, I'm only limited to this box, so I can't go any further than the box. I can't go out of the box. I can't go below the box. I'm just in the box. So do you think as a leader, you have unlimited leadership, your leadership lead is unlimited, or do you think the mindset would dictate that for you? Which is a great question. And also, it gives a really great diagram. If you have the book, it's on page 6 and 7, that shows where your leadership, where your leadership would be able to grow versus where it's at. So again, if you are at your leadership lid is only as high as a 3, that would mean you can only lead and influence at a 2. But the good news is you can grow that. So you can increase it to a 7, which means your leadership influence and effectiveness would be at a 6. So there's opportunity for growth. So if you have a chance, go back and review the chapter. Again, we've just gone over chapter 1 for John Maxwell's 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. And this was the law of the lid. I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, please ask in the comments. If there's anything else you'd like us to do a masterclass on, please again put that in the comments or email me. All the information is below. And our goal here is to make leadership great again. Have a good one.